A side, B side, what side are you on?
Well, hello. Welcome back. A-Side, B-Side podcast. How you doing, Adam?
I am doing well, Brooke. How are you?
Good, good. I cannot complain. Actually, I can complain. I'm not going to lie. Yes,
I was going to say, we just spent like 40 minutes complaining in the lead up to this about the weather. So.
I was going to say I 100% can complain about the weather because I feel like I was 100% bamboozled into moving to Nebraska where it is freezing. Okay. It is cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's 10 degrees colder here. So
I hate my life right now. Not really, but
I was gonna say, I don't have a lot of sympathy.
Yeah, it's frigid. It's real frigid here.
The first day that Lincoln is colder than St. Paul, you let me
know. I hope that never happens.
On Sunday, our projected low is -17, which is ridiculous. But I know that Lincoln is a huge change for Bowling Green.
Oh my gosh.
I remember when people used to get upset about the winter there, I'd be like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. And like people are like, well, you're from Buffalo. And I'm like, okay, do you understand the thing about Buffalo is it snows a lot. It can only be so cold to snow. If it gets past that cold point, that means it's too cold to snow or ice, which means it's entirely too cold.
Yeah, when I lived in Boston when my oldest was born, the snowstorms were amazing. Just giant because you've got the ocean and you've got more. It's just like the Northeast is just totally different with their snow, but it was 25 degrees at the coldest. It was never like -20.
Right.
Temperatures weren't expected to go there with their negative.
Yeah, I don't like this whole Fahrenheit thing. Can we switch to Celsius where it's like it doesn't seem as bad? It's just, oh yeah, it's 0.
Yeah. Well, and you were talking about the classic Midwestern like gotcha moment where it's the temperature. Oh, but then the wind chill.
Yes. So we had every Wednesday at work, we have the local law enforcement come in to do Crime Stoppers with us. And he said, yeah, it's going to be, whatever degrees, but it feels like something. And I was like, wait, I said something this. And he's like, well, actually, the temperature says this. And I'm like, does it matter? It's all below a certain point. Like, what are you speaking to me right now? It's all too cold. That's what it translates to.
Well, it's like when people in desert climates are like, oh yes, it's 110, but it's a dry heat. That is okay.
Right. It's still hot.
You put a chicken in the oven, it's still gonna dislike it.
Yeah. I finally got a parka though, so that has helped tremendously.
Yeah, with like the big hood and everything.
Big hood. It's long. It's like down past my knees. It's great.
Yeah. I mean, winter fashion is an entirely different thing.
Right.
I was telling you, I went out today and I had 2 hoodies and a jacket on. I had long johns on underneath my jeans with wool socks. I had a hat. I was like, I look like the Abominable Snowman. It's like there's no fashion left. No one's like, oh, that's a cute outfit. They're like, you appear to be alive. Good job.
Oh man. So final,
just to recap the last 10 minutes, it's cold.
It's so cold. Final episode of, no spoilers, final episode of Hawkeye.
I very much enjoyed it. They did a good job tying up a lot of loose ends. I don't like where they went with a couple things, but I'm open to seeing where they're going to play that out, if they're going to play it out. But yeah, I thought it was, again, Disney Plus did a really good job. And I find myself in a very weird situation where, on the whole, I think I enjoyed the Disney Plus TV series this year more than the movies.
Like all the movies?
Like just like if I compared the two, like did I get more enjoyment out of Marvel on Disney Plus, or did I get more enjoyment, words hard, about Marvel movies this year? And I think I really love the opportunity to tell stories on TV. And I love movies, but I've also always really loved TV. And I think that some of these stories, just having 6 hours to tell a story
Yeah,
arc, gives you so much more time to do
it
things.
it
And
really lets you connect with the characters.
like, I can't imagine that Eternals could have felt any longer.
Right?
It felt so long, but it was like 2 episodes, basically, maybe 3 episodes long. And my brain's like, well, maybe if they had 6 hours and weren't trying to rush it into 2 hours, it could have been a better story. Because I
Yeah.
think I'm just enjoying the long format of getting to kind of learn more about characters and play things out and have big, like, little moments in each episode that are exciting, and having that sort of up and down story, as opposed to just having one long story arc that's trying to climax within 2.5 hours. And it's tough to do. I mean, the funny thing is, when I said the Marvel movie universe, in my brain I wasn't even putting Spider-Man in there, because Spider-Man
Ooh,
does such a good job.
Spider-Man was amazing.
Yeah, he's the amazing Spider-Man.
I mean, well, yeah. I mean, oh my God. Well, obviously it was good because it broke all kinds of records, and good for
Yeah,
Tom Holland because, I think we had this conversation last week, but best Spider-Man to me, in my opinion.
yeah. No, I don't. I mean, I think everybody has their, like, connection to when they first saw Spider-Man, where it's gonna, like, be that little bit. But like, I, in the last week, have because what do I do but watch TV and movies? I've got 3 TVs on at a time. It's gonna have chances to rewatch stuff. But I went back after, spoiler alert, it is now 2 weeks after the movies come out, so nobody gets angry about us spoiling anything. It made me want to rewatch the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, because
Me
it's
too.
been a really long time since I've watched them, and I rewatched them, and I didn't like him as much as the Tom Holland ones. And I don't know if that's just recency bias, or, it's there's 20 years between the movies, so it's, movies are going to change a lot. But
No, I think he just, one, I remember, look, there's always going to be the nostalgia aspect of Toby, but I remember when it first came out, everybody was like, he looks like he's 30.
yeah, and it's like Tobey Maguire, like, and then the weirdest, like, why did the Spider-Man movies have to cast actresses with the wrong color hair and then dye their hair?
Yeah,
Because you
right.
got Kirsten Dunst to make her a redhead, and then Bryce Dallas Howard they made a blonde. It was like, why are we
Emma
doing
Stone.
this? Emma Stone, yeah, but Bryce Dallas Howard was in the Spider-Man 3.
Oh, right.
She played Gwen in that one, and then Emma Stone also with the red hair. And then one thing I noticed about rewatching, and this is not a foretaste of the A side, because it totally could have been, but I decided not to do it. But watching Spider-Man, the original one from 2002, there are a lot of people in bit parts in that you, like, forget about. Elizabeth Banks is in there for just like a hot second as one of the employees at the not, is it not the Daily Planet, the Daily Bugle.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's Elizabeth Banks, which totally threw me off. And then oh gosh, there was another one, but people that hadn't become stars yet, who were just kind of in the movie as well. So
Yeah.
that's always fun.
I loved the new Spider-Man. I did not think that I would have such an affinity towards Hawkeye that I do. And that's the good thing about the TV series, is they let you really learn and get attached to these characters, like like WandaVision did with Wanda and Vision, because in the Marvels, in the MCU movies, they're just kind of there, like, their story a bit, just a tiny bit of it, but otherwise you're just like, yeah, that's just Vision and Wanda, whatever. Whereas with
Well, and there's
WandaVision,
just so much. There's so much going on. You can't,
yeah.
they can't have much of a story.
And then like Loki, you get to know more about Loki, which of course Loki is hilarious anyway. And then, with Hawkeye, and then of course these are kind of the get you through till the next Marvel movie. So it's kind of interesting to just see.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm wondering if over time they're gonna like, if the TV series, they'll never, because I can't. Yeah, it doesn't make sense because then Spider-Man just comes and has the third biggest opening all time. So clearly the series aren't taking anything away from
No.
the shows, and if anything, it's just making it, a bigger deal. But I found myself sitting there going like, when's the next Disney Plus series? Like, come on, guys. And then today, the Book of Boba Fett has come out. I have not watched it yet, but Disney's definitely kind of doing like they Marvel and Star Wars are not going to be happening at the same time.
Yeah.
They're going to like space them out, because I know in the last winter is when they had Mandalorian season 2, and then it went into WandaVision, and then it went into the Bad Batch from Star Wars. And so I think they'll continue to keep them not running at the same time, because why cannibalize your own profits?
Right. Well, and we have seen because we're talking about upcoming, Morbius is coming out next couple of months.
Yeah, and I'm going to be completely honest.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, the character was never something I was all that interested in. I'm like so over vampires. Like vampires and zombies.
I love like zombies, whatever, but I've always been a vampire fan. My mom will tell you I've always been a vampire fan. So I'm pumped about Morbius. I think it looks pretty decent. I really am excited to see it. As kind of douchey as Jared Leto is, he's still a really good actor. Mm-hmm. As a person, I hear he's quite the twit, but as an actor, he's really good. So I am excited to see it. Plus, Michael Keaton, original Batman, is going to be in it. Of course, Michael Keaton has crossed over to the Marvel universe. Anyway, nerding out. I know, whatever. Shush.
Yeah. They've got a lot of interesting things happening with the Sony Spider Voice. I don't know. I still haven't seen the Venom Let There Be Carnage movie, which I totally missed when it was in theaters this summer. The other Venom was fine. I mean, it was funny because they cast, like, I feel kind of the same way about the character Venom as I do the actor Tom Hardy. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, it's interesting as a piece of as an ensemble, and I think he plays a better villain than he does a hero.
Yeah.
And I'm not all that interested in like seeing a solo thing. But going back to people that I didn't expect to see in Spider-Man, Octavia Spencer.
Oh.
Is got like a blink you'll miss it moment, as well as Macy Gray, Lucy Lawless, just like Jim Norton, the comedian. Like all these people are like popping up in the movie. You're like, hey. So it's very much that Spider-Man meme. Everyone's just pointing at each other. Joe Manganiello.
Oh, is it Manganiello or Manganiello?
I don't know.
Whatever.
I don't know. Joe, if you're listening, feel free to send us a pronunciation guide for your last name, and we'll make sure we don't mess it up for the next episode.
Also, the new Matrix is out. I saw that.
Yeah, what'd you think?
I need to rewatch. I'm gonna have to rewatch the original because, like, there's a lot of stuff I remembered, of course, but then there's stuff where I'm like, why is that happening? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first Matrix was so groundbreaking and so different and so interesting, and the problem was it was such a big hit that they had to make more. Mm-hmm. And you can totally, like, the Matrix lost me back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the 2 sequels came out, and they just clearly didn't have any story to tell. Yeah. So they're just like making stuff up as they went along because they needed to make another movie. And it's just like, you guys just had a really good thing that you could have just left alone. And you then ruined its legacy with 2 bad sequels. And now, this one, which came out 20 years later, and I have no desire to even see.
It was not spectacular. I was really hoping for more. I think at one point I did like doze because I was just like, I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
Falling asleep in an action movie.
I
It's a
know.
pretty big red flag. I don't know where that falls on the Rotten Tomatoes, but that's
Like
it's pretty bad.
I love of course Keanu, but I walked out of there like I'm so confused. So
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, the two sequels did not. I remember walking out of those movies, what, almost 20 years ago now, being like, what was that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I am excited to see The King's Man, which is out now. It's the prequel to the Kingsman movies, which
mhm.
Taron Egerton is in the King's Men movies, and the prequel looks amazing. If you're a Kingsman type person, you'll like those, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's another. It's again a. I just wonder why we can't spend the amount of time investing in
A
new
new,
stories.
yeah.
Like one of my favorite movies of last year was Gunpowder Milkshake with Karen Gillian, and it was a Netflix release, and it was an action movie with a very interesting cast, an interesting story, and it wasn't a sequel. And for some reason, those can't get any publicity, but the fifth version of something is going to get all this,
I know.
press, and it's like, why can't we just, let good movies be good and not have to make 5 to 6 sequels? I feel
Yeah.
so old saying that because I used to say I'm never going to be the person who like gets mad at sequels. But sometimes when something's good, just let it be
Let
good.
it be
You don't
good.
have to redo it.
Yeah. Somewhat because we were talking about Christmas movies, and of course Gremlins is a Christmas movie, and someone's like, oh, we need a reboot. I said, no, we don't. Let it be.
Yeah.
Gremlins is great as it is. Do not mess with it, because they would try to like change up the Gremlins and change Gizmo, and they would just be really ugh.
Oh yeah, Gizmo would be like roided out and a superhero voiced by The Rock,
Right.
which I mean, and I love The Rock, but it would be like this strange action movie where Gizmo turns into like Ninja Bunny and fights the Gremlins, and in the middle we find out that it's all a government plot to hide us from global warming or something.
Oh man. All right. So are you ready for this week's episode?
I am. I think we've gotten the longest intro we've ever had
It's
in of
possible.
itself. We
It's
used to say
possible.
it could be its own episode. Today's intro was its own episode.
All right. So this is episode 75, which means I go first. So I completely had this has happened to me, as you know, several times. I had completely had a different story picked out. Which, what does that say about true crime when you can say, well, I had this story, but well, this one came up. But as we saw over the course of the summer with Gabby Petito, and this issue came up time and time again when the entire world was looking for Gabby Petito, this beautiful, and what happened to her was horrific. I'm not taking from that. But we also saw the difference in media coverage when it's a young, beautiful white female as opposed to a person of color. And if they go missing, we saw that. And even her dad, after going through this, and he's dealing with this horrific thing with his daughter, her father takes time to call attention to it. And yet we're here once again. We're here once again. This story needs to get out there. And we may not have a million people listening, but we are using this platform to push this story because it needs to get out there.
Every little bit helps.
This is the story of Lauren Smith Fields. So Lauren, gorgeous 23-year-old social media influencer. She had dreams of becoming a physical therapist. And she did something that millions of people do every single day. Something both you and I, Adam, have both done, but we approach it very differently. She went online to find love. And Adam, when you go online, you obviously go from the perspective of a man, don't really have much to worry about. But when
Yeah, I don't have to worry about like, hey, I don't text my buddy and say, hey, I'm going to be at this place at this time. I'll call you afterward to let you know I'm safe.
right.
Yeah.
Sadly, when we go online as females, that's something we always like. Does this person seem crazy? Let me see if I can find their social media and look them up. That's just something that's always in the back of our head. But unfortunately, I, I don't know. Well, that's why we're talking about it, because we don't really know. So Lauren, like I said, she goes online trying to find love. And on Sunday, December 12th of this year, Lauren was found unresponsive in her Plymouth Street, Bridgeport, Connecticut apartment. According to her family, the person who called the police was an older white man that Lauren had recently met on Bumble. This man, who has not been named by police, was not even detained for questioning because they said he seemed like a nice guy. Excuse me? Isn't the very whole thing of your job to question everyone?
Yeah. And being a nice guy people have said that various serial killers seem like nice guys. Seeming like a nice guy is not a get out of jail free card.
How many times do we see on the news somebody has killed someone and their neighbor is like, oh, he seemed like such a nice guy? Come on. So the beauty influencer, she was active on YouTube. She posted beauty and hair videos. In high school, she went to Stanford High School in Connecticut. She was a track and field star. She was enrolled at Norwalk Community College for physical therapy. Some reports also say she was studying cosmetology. Her family also said she ran like her own little business to pay for her education. Her family says she was a beautiful child with the world at her feet. Lakeem Jeter, her brother, told Westchester 12, a television station, that an arrest was not made because the officer said the unnamed, not a person of interest, person that finds her unresponsive, eventually dead in her apartment. They said because he was nice and he didn't need to be investigated. Like, what? I don't understand that. But like, this is why it upsets me so much, because had that been Gabby Petito or another young white female, everyone in the vicinity would have been questioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if they had actually done any work, they could have just said, we looked into it and he had an alibi, or like, but they just go with, he was a nice guy.
Right. He was a nice guy. He called.
He was polite.
He's the one that called us. Do you know how many killers have called 911 when they've killed someone?
It's usually how they start their alibi.
Exactly. I just walked into this. So Everett Smith, that's Lauren's father, he said that the family has been denied the quote basic courtesies by police, and they were even told to stop calling. He's also stated that the family has had to deal with a very insensitive, condescending, and arrogant detective. He believes that foul play is involved. Everett said that without a doubt, we know that my daughter was not a drug user, and I had a second autopsy myself, paid out of pocket, because we felt so uncomfortable with the way it was handled. So the medical examiner has not said anything. They've not released any results. Again, there's no person of interest, even though this unnamed man, found her. Lauren's mom wrote a letter to the Bridgeport Police Department about Lauren's case, and they never responded. Councilwoman Maria Pereira said that the police owe Lauren's mother an apology. She said, quote, she sent a really well-written email. It was lengthy, it was extensive, it was very detailed. And I was shocked when she told me she had not even received a response.
And it's also a little like, it shouldn't have to be a well-written email to get a response.
Seriously.
It shouldn't have to be eloquent, or as a citizen, she deserves answers, period. Whether
If
she wrote them well or not, she
if
deserves
she
answers.
had written, "Tell me what's going on with my daughter," as the entire email, she still should have gotten a response. Mm-hmm. Like if it was filled with like cuss words, understandable because it's her daughter, it still should have received a response. You're absolutely correct. It should not have been, "Oh, councilwoman says it was this well," and I know she meant well in that, but it shouldn't have to be that to get a response.
No.
And she still didn't get a response. And understandably, her mom, inconsolable. She says, "It's killing me inside." She said, "I miss my baby. Life's not the same. I don't even know who I'm going to be after this." So initially, the Bridgeport Police Department extremely close-lipped on the case, but with the help of TikTok, which is where I actually saw this story, because it's not in the mainstream media, like looking for news sources for this, is pretty much 2 stories. Then there's more articles, but everybody is quoting like 1 or 2 sources. There is not what there should be about this case out there. But like I said, it's starting to kind of blow up on TikTok. It came up on my feed a few times, and I was like, I can't, in good conscience, not try to help her and help her get justice. And that's why I switched, because even though it's such a recent thing, it's not getting attention like it should. And I just think of, I've been on Bumble. My kids, my 2 daughters have been on Bumble. Like I would be losing my mind if something happened to them and the police were just like, "Oh, he was a nice guy. We don't think anything," but we don't really have any other leads.
And Bumble is one that's set up specifically with some protections in mind for how women have to deal with men on dating apps. I mean, as a male, you cannot just message someone you match with. The first message has to come from the female side. I mean, they as an app claim to be one that is trying to be safer, be more respectful. And I'm a little, I mean, I haven't seen anything, but there's nothing from Bumble, with their name getting thrown out there a lot. You think they'd be out there talking about this as well?
Right. Yeah, no. And you're right. It is quote unquote designed with the female in mind, so like if you and I were to match, I would have to send the initial email, and you only have 24 hours to do so.
Yeah.
So like I have to send you within matching, I have to send you a message in 24 hours, and then you have to respond within 24 hours or that's gone. It's gone.
Yeah. It's meant to not just have a little black book of people that you can constantly spam.
Exactly, which is what men do. Like I can't tell you on Tinder or on like Hinge or some of these other ones, like you match and then like 6 months later they're like, "Hey, what?"
Yeah.
So like, you've gone through your whole list and now I was
scrolling down.
Yeah.
No, and it's not just dating apps. I mean, it's any social media. Men have a very, very poor history of using messaging appropriately.
Ugh, yeah. But like I was saying, that with the help of TikTok, there is some attention being brought to this case, and finally, the police department has released a statement saying they're taking the family's concerns very serious. They said, quote, "The Bridgeport Police Department takes these concerns very seriously. The command staff of the Detective Bureau is reviewing the handling of this case to ensure that best practices were and are being followed. It is imperative to note that the death of Lauren Smith Fields remains an ongoing investigation. Our department extends its deepest condolences to the family of Lauren." It should not have taken this going viral on TikTok to get that little, 3-4 sentence.
Yeah, the paragraph that any first year public relations employee could write without thinking twice.
Yeah. So like I said, this story gaining a lot of traction on social media, but it's not anywhere like it should be on mainstream media. And of course, a lot of the reactions on social media are talking about that unnamed white male suspect and the white privilege that he is being afforded.
Simply by being an unnamed white suspect.
Yeah. And they're not, and the reports don't even say unnamed white male, but her family knew this. It's an unnamed white, it just says unnamed male, which we know how stories go. It would be unnamed black male or unnamed male. It's like, it's just the way stories are written, and it's frustrating. One Instagram writer, commenter said, that old white man does not want his family to know what he was doing, that he was doing whatever with a young black woman. He called somebody he knew on the force, and they're covering it up. Which, look, I'm not typically a conspiracy theorist, but that was one of my first thoughts too. Like, this older gentleman in a town like Bridgeport, which is not, I'm sure he's well connected, and probably called up the police chief or whoever and was like, hey man, look, I need, it's a population of 148,000 people, so it's not like humongous, it's not small, it's bigger than what we were in Bowling Green, but still not huge, so it would be easy for him to have some insides, allegedly. Gotta say that.
Well, and I would say that I think it's even more disturbing that he probably doesn't have to have any insides or any. He doesn't have to make a phone call. He was a nice older white gentleman. So the random other person decided, well, we're not going to look into it.
Yeah.
Sadly, that's probably all it took.
Unfortunately. Another Instagram user said, Ted Bundy got away with his crimes for so long because he was, quote, charming, white privilege, white male privilege. And a third person commented, we watch the world search for that white girl and her killer, but nothing for this young lady, which leads back to the point of crime like this is horrific, no matter who it's committed to, by, against. But when it's committed against a person of color, especially women, the media drops the ball time and time again. And so did the police, although maybe not, because who knows, did they drop the ball or did they actively participate in a cover up? That still remains to be seen. We don't know. Justice for Lauren. That's what we need.
And how many times have we, in other cases that we've looked at on the B side, where somebody became a serial killer, specifically targeting people of color, knowing that they weren't going to be investigated at the same level? Granted, a lot of, often some of those stories are taking part years ago, but there's still clearly an issue going on even today.
Absolutely, because look, it's true. And who knows if Lauren is the only one? She's the one whose family has been vocal. What if there is somebody else that maybe didn't have family, or maybe their family just hasn't been able to bring themselves out like that? We don't know.
Or don't feel comfortable putting the spotlight on themselves or speaking out in public. It's not everyone is, grieves in the same way.
Yeah, I know. I think of my daughters, I think of myself. And if something like this was to happen, I hope that everybody would, move heaven and earth like they did for Gabby Petito. But unfortunately, I don't have that confidence, sadly. And that sucks, because anytime any person gets hurt or goes missing or ends up dead, we should all be putting forth every effort.
We hope, we are taught as kids that the law is going to treat people and investigate everyone's crimes. And one of the saddest things about growing up is seeing how untrue that really is.
So again, that's why I said, we might not have 1 million followers, but the platform that we do have, we just had to get this story out. And former Bridgeport police, this was a recent headline from not too long ago. Former Bridgeport police chief facing multiple charges. So obviously there is some kind of, there is a bit of corruption going on in that police department, but we hope that her killer is brought to justice and she can rest easy. We just want justice for Lauren.
And every story, every share, every time something like this is mentioned on social media, it all, it may be just one grain of sand, but it all adds up. So the more talking about it, the more hopefully pressure there will be to find and investigate.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is the B-side.
So now is the time where we switch gears from the B side over to the A side. And normally that you get to hear a whole story about Adam's TV watching week and what was going on. And I do have a whole segment ready to go. And I will be completely honest, I do not feel remotely appropriate in changing gears this week. Brooke, sometimes we have stories that just do not, that sit different and feel different. And out of, I don't know, it's a, they say all symbolism it can be hollow, but I think, and I think you're in agreement with me that this week our entire episode should be focused on Lauren. I'll do another A side at a different time, but in the 20 minutes that our audience would normally listen to something about movies, feel free to research, share this story, talk to somebody else about Lauren's story, use that 20 minutes for something a little bit more than escape this week, because this one, so often we talk about stuff that's decades old, 100 years old sometimes. This is 2 weeks old. Somebody that is still, his family is hurting in the moment, and a crime that no one is talking about and is not being discussed. So this week we're going to skip the A side, and don't worry, you'll get plenty of movies and nostalgia and rants about filmmaking another time. But
well, and like when I mentioned earlier about there only being like one news source in the other articles, you Googled it yourself.
Yeah, and I spend a lot of time on Google. I mean, part of one of my gigs is doing data research, and I am on the internet all day long, and I do research for recruiting companies, and I will Google people's names hundreds of times a day. And I can find more information about a mid-level employee in a recruiting firm in Stockholm than I can about this story. Mm-hmm. And that is, it feels completely criminal and makes you feel like something is very, very wrong, to the point where like you can find more stories about the guy with my same name who is a high school football coach in Alabama in a second than you can about this. And that is very disturbing. And hopefully, he said, this is just one link, but one more out there asking questions. And because this is, something's just not right.
Yeah. I couldn't. Yesterday, I don't know, like, because we always prep and I normally have something picked, and I couldn't sit with myself if I didn't try to contribute. I don't have answers. I'm not a detective, but there is something so not right about this story, and we just gotta get it out there. We gotta get our name out there, so that, because we have seen this happen before, that finally when the public gets a hold of something and puts enough pressure on a police department, they step up, and like, lo and behold, it's like, oh, we did have some evidence, or we did have a suspect.
Yeah, or maybe we should question this guy or the neighbor, or it'll finally come out that maybe they're hiding this investigation, and that this, more pressure, more attention will caused someone to slip up that they're trying to catch. I don't know, but more needs to be done and said about this because it is way too easily brushed under the rug.
Well, we will, of course, keep you updated if there are any, hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, there will be updates as the days and weeks progress. Keep doing your research. If you're on TikTok, if you happen to have a story of hers come up on your FYP, promote it, like it, share it, comment on it, because those things help those stories get pushed out there more. If you come across something, tag it in on your social medias. We just got to get her name out there, and we got to get them looking into this case. You the website,
Yeah,
the socials. It really doesn't feel like a time to plug all that. It's just, let's just help get justice for Lauren. That's been another episode. Thanks, Adam.
that's